Do you feel like you might be making huge mistakes in your relationships and you just don't know what they are? Today, we have an amazing show for you talking about the 10 relationship myths. How it applies to your spouse, how it applies to kids. We're going to have lots of examples. We have an amazing educator with us today. His name is Rabbi Chaim Trainer, and he wrote a book called Shalom Secrets. And he has a socially smarter. So how to interrelate. It's awesome. Stay tuned. Start typing in your questions. We're going to be live in a minute. Rabbi Trainer, it is such a pleasure to have you on board. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your wisdom with us.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
We go right in very deep, very fast in the show. So I'm going to start with a very bold question. You're going to give us the 10 myths, but I want to start with the whole point that you want to start with is that to not complain and just stoically bear things. So how is that a myth? That seems like a truism. You should, complaining, because I know some people who complain, right? Okay. So please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. There is a misconception. A lot of people think that just be quiet, just stop complaining and just don't say anything about it. And that'll bring peace. And that's really, really a myth. But in order to understand why it's a myth, we first have to define what is shalom, what is peace. Peace doesn't only mean no fighting, no active yelling. Peace means there's no bad feelings between two people. Ooh. And the Torah tells us very clearly that bad feelings is something we want to avoid and we want to resolve. So it says, for example, in Vayikra Yutes in Leviticus 19, it says that Lo yisisna esochicha bilvavecha. Don't hate your brother in your heart. And the commentaries say, yeah, it really means literally in your heart. If you go to somebody and you say, I hate your guts, you don't violate this prohibition. You may violate others, but not this one. Okay.
Well, you mean because you're verbalizing it instead of
verbalizing it? Absolutely. So what's going on here? The Torah is telling us that if you can just forget about it and you don't have any bad feelings whatsoever, that's great. Go ahead. But many times we won't. And then we are not supposed to just keep it in. We are supposed to talk about it. Because if we don't, it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and much more difficult to resolve.
Can you give an example?
Sure.
Like yeah.
Right. What is talking going to help? Right? How does talking about the problem help? So let's say, for example, I'll give you an example of what happened to me. I'm a teacher in a classroom, and they were all davening Shemoneh Esrei. They were praying the silent prayer, and it's a very serious time. Everybody's quiet. And all of a sudden, there's a boy, he's whistling. Not only that, he's whistling at me. I'm looking at him, what is your problem? What's the problem? But I knew this is a good boy. So I waited till he finished, and I said, what was that all about? Instead of getting angry and disciplining him right away, what was that all about? And he told me, listen to what he said. At that time, my daughter was in the hospital with surgery, serious surgery. And every morning I put her Hebrew name up on the board so people should say a special prayer for her. And that morning I forgot. So he got to that point in the prayers where he wanted the name and he didn't know. See, he wanted the name. Do you think I was angry at him? Are you kidding? I was so touched by his caring and sensitivity. So many times, if we talk about it, we'll clear up misunderstandings. The person didn't really mean what you thought he meant, or the person did it by accident. So by talking about it, that's one benefit. And there's another benefit also, because when we talk about it, you're giving the person an opening to make amends, to apologize. He may be scared, you're angry, you may not want to make peace, but if you talk about it in a nice, calm way, that gives him just the right opening to say, I'm really sorry. And when someone says, I'm really sorry, that makes peace. It really does.
So how do you communicate it in a way without being angry? Like, I mean, he's whistling at his Rebbe to come, whatever, attend to him in some way. Steam must have been coming. I mean, it would be coming out of my ears.
Right.
How did you make the leap to just, what was going on? Like, that just seems superhuman, like not doable.
Right. You have to realize people generally are decent. People generally are decent, and they have a rationalization why they do things. Because if we look at ourselves, we also do things that are not so sensitive and not so nice. Mm-hmm. But I have an excuse. I have a reason. They also do. So if we start out from that point, that people are generally decent,
it makes it easier for that to approach them in a way without the benefit.
Absolutely. But there's one more thing I want to mention, and that's maybe even the most important benefit of talking about it, is so the person doesn't do it again. Because if you don't talk about it, the person is doing it again and again and again, and then you're really going to be upset. We have to resolve these things at the onset, and then they're so much easier.
So you're saying the myth is that you should just swallow it, and that's the right thing to do, to just take it. And you're saying that's a myth. Better if you can't just let it go. If there's still some, you need to communicate about it.
Absolutely.
Now, can you give us some guidelines in that communication? Obviously, everybody has to be well fed and not angry at something else and not taking it out. I mean, can you give us a little bit of guidelines? And I see a bunch of questions are coming in, so I'm gonna.
Sure. Then maybe we should skip to the next to a different myth, and I'll cover exactly how to do it. Okay.
Okay.
So,
do we have time for a question? Can I?
Yeah, no, because I was gonna say. So, can we ask the question that's coming in, because it's such a good question? So I think we could cover this first before we move on.
Okay.
So Yafa is asking, in general, and it's funny, like I so relate to this, you do feel as though, okay, you want to be able to share and so on and so forth, but so many times the person shares and we don't take it well, even if they're trying to share it in a nice way, because automatically
communicate something we did that upset them, you're saying.
Correct. Meaning sometimes like they're saying, I always tell, the perfect examples, for example, I remember when we were first married, my husband always says, if you're going to cook something that's not to my liking or like really bad, I want to be able to tell you, because otherwise you're going to keep cooking it and I'm going to be eating the same thing that I don't like for the rest of my life. So, and I was like, sure, for sure, of course, you tell me, right? Okay. Until the first time he told me, and I'm like, what? And no matter how he tried to convey it, it was like, a sinking ship. It kept going worse.
She's going like this, downhill.
And all I kept thinking and all I kept saying to him was like, I read books about the these big gedolim, and you hear how the woman made tasteless soup, or she put salt in all the things and they ate the whole thing and they didn't say anything. And I'm like, why can't you be like them? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you want to sit there and say, oh yeah, it's great that we're sharing, but it really hurts sometimes, no matter how it's being said. So like, how do you navigate that?
Okay. So, there's no easy answer to that, but there is a right way and a wrong way to criticize, to correct somebody. Okay. And that's really important, because the usual way that we correct somebody is we say, why did you make this food? It's terrible. Okay. So that's the wrong way to do it. First of all, because you don't really want to know the answer to that, why they made the food. What's the difference? Why? That's not what you really want. And they'll become very, very defensive. If you say anything negative, anything negative, they're going to become extremely, extremely defensive. So some people, and then we get to the other myths, they use the I language. Okay, I feel hurt. I feel unloved when you make me this type of supper that I don't like. Now, sometimes you have to use the I language, but it's not the first
That's
address
the first thing they tell you. That's the first thing that when you're having conflict resolution, use the I word. And that's that's the myth that it's a panacea for all communication problems. So you're saying not use it.
No, that's a myth. I didn't say never use it. And I'll tell you in a minute when we could use it, but that's not what you should do right away. So imagine your husband says to you, I feel so unloved when you serve me this supper. I mean, you're going to feel really attacked. I mean, like, what's the problem? And he doesn't need that. All he needs to say, and this is the first tool that we teach, what I call, it's an acronym, it's SAYROC, SAYROC. The first tool is say in a low, calm voice how you would like the other person to act in the future and be specific. So number one is low, calm voice, but how you would like the person to act in the future. Don't say, you always forget to pick up the cleaners. Don't say that. Just say, tomorrow on your way home from work, do you think you could pick up the cleaners? Now, you know that he forgot yesterday, but you don't have to say that, because if you say it, he's automatically going to be hurt and put on the defensive. You don't have to say, this tastes terrible. All you have to say is, next time, I think you should put a little less salt. Could you do that for me? And just speak about the future and also be specific. Don't just say, I don't like this. Be specific. Is it you don't like eggplant at all? Or there's too much ketchup? Next time, please put less ketchup. You have to be specific. So many times, we're just not specific. You just don't care about me. You just don't care about me. Well, that's not the way to go, because then the person's, I don't care. What are you talking about? I care. You're the one that doesn't care. And then it goes back, builds and builds and builds and builds. Yeah. So what we need to do is just be calm. Say in a low, calm voice how you want to in the future and be specific. And that will minimize, and of course, do it in private. Don't do it in front of other people. And that will minimize those feelings that you were talking about.
Did that answer your question? Type in if that answered your question. Okay, good.
Yeah, no, that actually was really good.
It was spot on.
It helped me too.
And you're going out of order of the 10, so I gotta make sure okay, so we did that. We did, okay, to complain, you're sharing, okay. And then the other one was not using the I language all the time. When would you use the I language, Rabbi?
The I language you use, if you tried this a number of times and the person totally ignored you, then this is not working. So this person maybe is not really getting it, that this is important to you. So then maybe I have to use the I language. But if you used it and it worked a couple of times and then it didn't work, don't say, oh, this again. No. He's a human being. He forgot. Or maybe he got carried away. He raised his voice. Oh, you're not allowed to raise your voice. True. But he got carried away. So just say, next time we discuss this issue, could you please try to keep the volume down? I feel better that way.
So you're saying in a lot of the communications where you're trying to resolve the conflicts, if you throw it into the future, the person doesn't get as defensive.
Absolutely.
Is that gorgeous? Ladies, you heard it here first. Gorgeous. Okay, fine. What? She's got another question, but I want to go on to number 3. Okay, go on to number 3, Rabbi. Just tell me which one you're doing.
Okay, number 2 is, if I prove I'm right, we'll have peace. Okay, so many people, even if they don't consciously say this, but when you look at people in a conflict, it must be what they believe, because that's what everybody's trying to do. Just prove I'm right. And they go and prove. And what happens when you try to prove you're right? What does the other person do? Try to prove that they're right. Okay. So it is possible in rare situations that if you really explain why you're right, you may bring peace. But that can't be our goal. Because then if we start fighting, the person's going to sense that and fight back. And the truth is, even if we prove that we're right, okay, so we proved we're right. Do you think the other person's going to be really happy? There's still some bad feelings from the whole incident. So what did you gain? You really didn't gain anything. I tell people, you have to imagine every time you're in a conflict, imagine there are 2 boxes, beautiful treasure boxes. And in one it says, Shalom, peace. And in one it says, who's right? You open the one that says who's right, you're both going to find out who's right. But you're not going to have peace. but you'll find out. You open the one that says peace, you'll have peace, but you won't know who's right. Which one would you choose? Little kids, they'll all choose the one with the peace. Because if they're not going to have peace, what's the difference who's right? So if we keep that in mind, our goal has to be peace. Then we could figure out the best way about it. But if our goal is to prove who's right, we're doomed to failure.
Okay, good. We got questions coming in. Go ahead.
Yeah, by the way, Leah, it's so funny. That's exactly literally what you say all the time, that if you could stop and say to yourself, what does Hashem want from you right now? He wants me to choose peace. It can actually stop you from doing a lot of things. So Rachel is asking, what if your husband is very prickly and always having issues getting along with community members, and you don't know how to respond to him when he constantly tells you about the fights he gets into with others?
Say that again. What did she say?
You don't know how to respond to him when he constantly tells you about the fights he gets into with others.
Oh.
Meaning your husband wants to share what's going on, but there's a point where you're like, okay, this is a constant thing, and he's constantly, having issues with people, and it's not actually making me feel good about my husband when I hear him complaining all the time about all these types of things.
So you're saying he's having problems with other people. He shares it with you, and it makes you feel less about him. So how do you solve
Exactly.
that?
Correct.
Is that clear, Rabbi? This little.
Yeah, but it's like an almost impossible question. Okay, so the way I would deal with it is as follows. Number one is, of course, you have to listen empathetically to your husband. If he really needs to tell you this, then he needs to tell it to you. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, again, whenever you're going to try to change somebody, you have to really do it in a way that you tell him a little tiny thing that he could do differently. And really, a good rule for how to deal with conflict, when you want to point out somebody did something wrong, make it as small as possible and as easy to repair as possible. It's the opposite when it comes to our own transgressions.
Write that down, Ilana. That was gorgeous, gorgeous. Wait, can you say it again, Rabbi?
Sure. When we have a conflict with other people and we want to change something that they're doing, we have to make it as small as possible and as easy to fix as possible.
So awesome. So awesome. Okay.
When we have our own transgressions, we make big things. When we apologize, we say, wow, I did a terrible thing. I don't know how I could have done that. That was so insensitive. Great. But when it's somebody else, the bigger you make it, the more defensive they're going to be, the more they're not going to be willing to cooperate, and the less they're going to be optimistic that they can actually change. So I'm a terrible person. Okay. So I guess I'm a terrible person. So that's life, So if you want to change your husband, you listen, and you may, you have to make that decision. I'm not there, but you may want to say something like, what do you think would have happened if you would have said this? Asking his opinion, not telling him what to do. What do you think would have happened if you would have just nodded your head and been quiet? And it's his choice whether to really answer that. And if he says, probably would have just stopped the whole thing. That's enough.
And you said, zip your lips.
Just be quiet after that.
Our podcast people can't see you do this. So I'm I'm explaining to the people only audio that, he's zipping up his lip. Okay. Wow. So then you let him come to it himself. And it sounds like,
absolutely.
That's doable. That's doable. It's gorgeous. Okay. Well, let's go on to number 4. Oh, and she had another question. Okay. What's number 4?
We're up to number 4 in our numbers is, you want me to apologize?
No, I guess it's number 3. I think it's number 3.
Yes, it is number 3.
You went out of order. It's all your fault, Rabbi. Okay, so go ahead.
It's number 3. If the other person apologizes, then I'll be ready to make peace. When he comes over to me, then I'll speak. But I'm waiting when he apologizes because he's the one that did something wrong, not me. It's so interesting. When two people get into a conflict, each person thinks that they're right and the other person's wrong. But really, they don't only think that they're right, they know they're right, and they know the other person's 100% wrong. If they know they're right, guess what? The other person thinks the same thing. So they both know they're right. So no one's going to apologize, and we're never going to have peace. Stalemate. What do? There is an answer. And that is, I found, if you look at conflicts, probably don't look at your own first, because that'll be hard for you to see objectively. Look at other people's conflicts. You'll see that in almost every conflict, both parties have something to apologize for. Maybe one person was 95% wrong and the other person was only 5%. But if you care about people's feelings, you want to apologize even for the 5%. Maybe the other person did it on purpose and you did it by accident. But so what? You hurt somebody. You want to apologize. Maybe the other person started and you were just reacting. So of course, but so what? You should apologize. So in almost every conflict, guess what? We're going to have something to apologize for. And that's the key. Take the lead. Take the lead. Find every conflict. What can I apologize for? Well, I raised my voice. Yeah, but look what the other guy did. But I raised my voice. I'm sorry I raised my voice. And you know what's probably going to happen after that. The other person's going to say, well, yeah, I'm sorry I did that. It's over. It's done. But if you don't apologize for even the 5%, that person's going to say, get out of here. I'm not apologizing. He raised his voice. So I'm justified. But as soon as you apologize, you just deflated the whole conflict.
Wow, it's so gorgeous. Wow. Don't you think like newlyweds need to hear this? Like, hello.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Unbelievable. I mean, we all need to hear it, but I mean,
I need to hear it every time.
Yeah, so we actually have two questions that came in. I'll put them both together and then Rabbi can respond as it goes. So Yafa is saying, what happens if you haven't done this, obviously, for forever? And how do you sort of change the mentality of the home and recreate what obviously needs to be recreated? And the other question from Hani on the same sort of note is, she's saying, what happens if the person's apologizing, but there's always a but? So the apology doesn't seem genuine. So even though they're really apologizing for even that 5%, rather they don't apologize because it's not coming out genuine.
Mhm.
Two different questions. My mind is not big enough to deal with both of them at the same time. But,
Okay, start with the first one.
okay, let's start with the first one. The first one, remind me. The first one was, how do you change the whole atmosphere?
Oh,
of the
yeah.
home?
After so
Right.
many
And
years.
the answer is slowly, okay? Step by step. So you need to really become familiar with a new way of talking. And, I used to say, I used to encourage even children to say, in the future, and then I realized, no, then it makes it sound like it's a formula. It's not a formula. It's just the right way to speak. So don't make it a formula. Just get comfortable with this way. And if you start talking that way, you're going to see other people are going to start talking that way too. So if we act in a very sensitive, caring way, nobody wants to be left back in class, back in second grade. They want to be on your level too. So they're also hopefully going to rise.
Is this all outlined in your book, Shalom Secrets?
Absolutely. So Shalom Secrets will say,
It steps.
all we said and more.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's fantastic. Okay, good. Just so people know, Shalom Secrets, and it's by Chaim Trainer, Trainer. Okay, fine. And we'll give you the link after. We'll talk about it.
Right. Okay. Just to show people this is.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wait. It's all, you went blurry. Adam, he's all blurry. How do I get him on blurry?
Okay. Maybe because I put the
Yeah.
book up.
Maybe put the book on your, there. Now we see it there.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Fantastic. Okay.
Great. Okay. So the second question was.
What was the second question, Sheree? You're confusing both of us. We're trying to do a show here. You're just mucking up. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so the second question that came in from, I I have to scroll back, but I believe it was Hani,
Okay.
was that what happens if the person's apologizing
Yes,
and the
but.
apology is not genuine because it's with a but, or it's not being said with that, like, it's just sort of like, I just want to appease them. I don't want to deal with it. So I'm just going to apologize. And you don't feel there's a genuine apology.
Okay, good question. You have to really understand. I mean, we all understand it's very hard to apologize. It's very difficult to apologize. It shouldn't be. And I'll tell you, once you get into the habit, it's not so bad. It really isn't. But until you get into the habit, it's hard. And part of the reason it's hard to apologize is because people don't talk right. They're always incriminating the other person. So that's a problem. So if you change that atmosphere and you make it easy to apologize, that's something also that to keep in mind. But the fact that the person said but doesn't mean that they're not sincere. It may just mean they're just trying to save face. So if you are convinced they're not sincere, there's nothing I could do for you. Okay, the person's not sincere. But if a person is like half sincere, separate it. Say, you know what? The person probably really does feel bad. And the reason they said but is because they feel like if they don't say but, then they're the bad guy. So they have to say, but you also don't. But you also don't. Not a good idea, but at least we can be more understanding. Take the apology and run with it, and then deal with the but part.
So you're saying just let that one slide. Just
right.
Yeah.
If I should add something, if we're short on time, I don't have to. But if I should add, the but is usually talking about the past, right? So the question I get a lot is, what if somebody talks to you about the past and says to you, you did something bad? What do you do then? What do you do? And I called it the turn it around trick. Just don't address, just turn it around to the future. You never have supper ready on time. Would you like me to have supper ready on time when you come home? Just turn it around. You don't even have to ask a question. You could say, you know what? I'm going to try to have supper on time. If you can't have supper on time, then you could explain what the problem is, but you could say, you know what? I have to do homework with the children. If you would agree to do the homework, then I'll have supper on time.
I like that one. That's good. All right, that's good. Okay, let's go to the next one.
Okay, next one. If someone's bothering you, just ignore him. Just ignore them. Just ignore him.
You hear that from parents all the time. The kids
Tell the kids, just ignore him. See, this is a myth that started back in nursery school. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never harm me. You know, you may be able to fool kindergarten kids, but you can't fool us. It's not true.
Yeah.
That is totally untrue. Words and names hurt more than physical hurting. I have a friend.
Wow.
He was somewhat of a loner. He, didn't really hang out with his friends. And one time I happened to be walking the same direction. So I took the opportunity and I walked with him and I got into a conversation with him. Really nice man. And we were talking. I told him I do Shalom secrets. He says, I want to tell you a story. He was in elementary school and he got in trouble. He did something wrong and the teacher punished the entire class because of his misbehavior. Those other kids never let him live it down. They were just so hard on him. And he turns to me and he says, that changed my whole life. I'm a different person today because of that. So yeah, words hurt.
You mean he felt he was put down by his whole class and that just
put down by his whole class. That made him like a loner, isolation, really nice person. But he just felt that really just squelched part of his personality.
So what's the flip side of words can never hurt? I mean, how do you solve this myth?
Right. So what you do is, now what you do is you have to realize that words can hurt. And to ignore comments that somebody's making is maybe a tactic after you've tried everything else. We talked about how to talk about the future. Talk to the person who hurt you. Talk about the future. See if that works. Try some other tricks we have in Shalom Secrets. If nothing works, then maybe trying to understand that it's only words will lessen the pain. And we have a secret 27, about how to do that.
Tell us.
But that's all the way at the end. That's after you've tried everything else.
I see.
And the way to do that is just to realize that it's, I can go into that, but I think maybe we should.
Yeah, we've got so many more to come, and we've got a question coming in. Okay, so got a couple. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so we have a question on Facebook from Linda who asks, is there a source for peace taking precedence over everything else?
There is a source for peace not taking precedence over everything else. Peace does not take precedence over everything else. There are many cases that we have evil people, and we don't just say, let's be friends. And we have to either punish them or go to war or whatever it is. Peace is not the supreme value. The supreme value is listening to our Creator. But peace is way up there. Yes. And there are so many sources for it. I mean, it's just peace, it says, is the only thing that can really keep any blessing. If we want any blessing in our lives, the Talmud says, we have to have peace. Peace is the source of all blessing, and it's the container, the vessel to hold all blessing. And there are countless examples through history, in the Torah, in the Talmud, about situations when if there was peace, fine. If not, not. I'll just give you a quick example from the Torah, from the Bible. We know the story of the Mabul, of the flood, of Noah and the flood, right? And they were all wiped out. And then a little while later, they had the Dor HaFlaga, the generation that wanted to build a tower to battle with God. What's going on? The battle with God, nothing happened to them. Their languages were confused and done. No punishment. The Mabul, they stole from each other. Big deal. Which is worse, fighting with God? Say the rabbis, you know why? The generation that were building a tower, they were in unity. They were at peace with one another. That's the only they were able to build. But Noach and the Mabul, they were stole from each other. They didn't get along with each other. All protection is gone.
Wow. Chilling.
Wow. So just a really quick one from Tali, who asks, how can you get your kids to have peace with each other?
Teach them Shalom Secrets.
Book plug, right?
You really, you have to, there's, I'll go to another myth. There's a lot of different myths here, but one of the myths is we need a bully prevention program in schools. You have to have bully prevention program. Now, I'm not for bullying. Don't get me wrong. I'm anti-bullying and it's zero tolerance for bullying. The problem is this approach is not going to be effective, and it's just not a Torah approach. It's not going to be effective because first of all, you're going to get arguments about what's bullying. And I looked into this. There's a whole bunch of different theories about what the definition of bullying. It has to be aggressive. It has to be from a position of power. There has to be an imbalance of power. It has to be repetitious. It has to be someone who can't protect himself. So you're going to get into a whole argument. Is it bullying? Isn't it bullying? But even more than that, imagine if a country didn't have a law against stealing. They only had a law against stealing $100 or more. Only more than $100, because little money, we're not going to be busy with that. That's not going to be effective because that means the message you're sending is stealing is not inherently bad. It's over $100. We don't, it's not going to work. Society is not going to work, but it's not inherently evil. It's never going to work. It's never going to work. We have to send the message that this is evil, whether it's bullying or not. Hurting someone's feelings is absolutely prohibited. It's a verse in the Torah, in Leviticus as well. And it says, V'lo yisoinu ish es amisai. One is not allowed to hurt someone. And the Talmud explains, it doesn't mean physically, it doesn't mean financial. It means with words. And I call it the simple rule. And if a family wants to know, the first thing they should implement in their home is the simple rule. And the simple rule is, we may not say or do anything that might hurt anyone's feelings. We may not say or do anything that might hurt anyone's feelings. And this is serious. Hurting with words, the Talmud says, is worse than stealing someone's money. And it says, if you embarrass somebody in public, it's akin to murder. To murder. Not only that, there are practical ramifications to this. There are many people in history, and we know the stories, that they were willing to give up their lives rather than embarrass somebody in public. So we don't need an anti-bullying program. We have an anti-murder program. And this is real, and this is an absolute value. I had a story in my class, before I started showing secrets, of course. I had a story in my class. There was a boy. He wasn't very popular. He had some social challenges. He was overweight. And he comes over to me one Sunday and he says that there was a boy. He was walking on the street on Shabbos with his father. There was another boy in my class who was on the other side of the street by himself. And he crawls across. Hey, fatso! I couldn't believe it. With his father, I couldn't believe it. So I call this boy over. Let's call him Maishi. I say, Maishi, is this true that you said, hey, fatso Tim? He looks at me innocently. He says, yeah, wasn't in school. Wasn't in school. This is not a school rule.
You mean he felt like it's out of school, he could do whatever he wants?
Yeah, this school rules, anti-bullying program. Okay. This is a life rule. This has to go into our bones. Every one of us. And I say it's a simple rule. Simple to understand, simple to remember, not simple to keep. Oh, no. Anybody who's honest with himself knows it's not simple to keep, but it's basic. And that's where it has to all begin. From the simple rule. Once we become sensitive and caring, then anything can happen. But until we're sensitive and caring, it's not going to work.
Okay, we want to go to the next one, but I see she's flagging me. Can I go to the next one?
Yeah, because I want to get through the 10. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm putting this on the side. We have to get through the 10.
Okay, good. Okay, so let's go to the next one. This is, wow.
Okay. Let's go to the next one.
So the rule for that last one, just to make sure I understand, that the rule is that, I mean, the concept is to teach our children not to hurt other people's feelings, not this whole anti-bullying and this and that, and it's in school, it's out school or whatever. Just if we try and inculcate that in our, is that the right word? If we try and infuse our children with that message, that's the strongest way that if we all do that, that there won't be bullying in the first place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have a poster. I have a poster with the simple rule in my class, and I tell the boys, this is not a school rule. This is not a class rule. This is a life rule. That's what they have to really understand. And let me just mention one thing quickly, is that bully prevention programs puts all the attention on the bully, and we ignore the victim. They need help. They need coping skills and how to deal with bullies. There's a chapter in the book that deals with it. They may need some social skills because maybe they're inadvertently attracting this bullying. So let's focus on fixing the entire problem, not just this anti-bullying program.
Okay, I got it. Okay, good.
Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, this is a really good, okay, because everybody says, when see somebody doing something wrong, how would you like it if someone did that to you? So I just asked my class, did anybody ever say millions of times they heard it already? Millions. Everyone says it.
Everyone's nodding.
Everyone. And here I'm coming saying, this is not very effective. Why not? First of all, you know what's going to happen because you tried it. And they say, no, I wouldn't mind if somebody said that to me, right? They're going to get arguing. Would you mind? Wouldn't you mind? So that I'll be. It's just not a good way to go. And second of all, it's not a real clear motivation to change a behavior, because it's a philosophical truth, yes. But really, so let's say I admit, yeah, I wouldn't like it if somebody did it to me, but who cares? I'm doing it to him. What's the problem? No, it's hypocritical. It's not a really strong motivator. So I'll tell you a story. I was once out by recess and I was watching the yard, and there was my colleague, another teacher out there. And somebody from his class comes over to him and says, Rebbe, they don't let me play. They don't let me play any game. They're leaving me out. So he says, oh, call the boy over who's in charge. Call him over. So he calls over. You could tell the way he walks over already. He has an attitude, So we'll call him Yankee. Yankee walks over. Yeah. He says, is it true that you're not letting him play? Yeah. How can you do that? Well, what's wrong? How would you like it if they did that to you? Wouldn't bother me. Wouldn't bother me. Come on, be honest. Be honest. Come on. No, wouldn't bother me. I play myself. See, he didn't know what to do. So he knew I was working on a program. So he says, Rabbi Trainer, what do you say? So I turned to the boy and I said, it doesn't really matter whether it would bother you or not, because that's not what's happening now. They're not doing it to you. You are not letting that boy play. Do you think that maybe that boy feels hurt and left out because you don't let him play? Maybe. Then you can't do it. We're so busy with how would you feel. All you have to do is say, how would that person feel? We have the simple rule already. How would that person feel? And I had kindergarten teachers tell me, even little kids can think, how would that person feel? We need to focus on the other person. And I tell them, before you say or do anything, ask yourself a question. Is this going to make the other person feel good or bad? Good, go ahead. Bad, don't do it. You're not sure? Don't take a chance. Don't take a chance. If you weren't sure if there was poison in the drink, would you serve it to guests? Maybe, maybe not.
Not to yourself.
Of course not. Of course you wouldn't. Now, it's focus. I remember when I went to sleepaway camp when I was about 7, 8 years old. And I barely remember anything from sleepaway camp, but I remember one incident. It was the last night of the summer. And the counselor decided he's going to give, I think he called it tissue awards, like funny awards, like who comes late the most or something like that. He's going to give awards. And I won an award. What was my award? The person who can look at his watch the most times in 1 minute. I had a nervous habit at the time. I was constantly looking at my watch. I don't even know if I looked at the time. I just was, every couple of minutes I would look at my watch. And he gave me an award. I felt like digging a hole and just going down. I was so hurt. I don't remember a thing from that summer. I remember that. I remember everything about that incident. What was the counselor's mistake? It was funny. It was a joke. He was focusing on himself instead of focusing on the other person. I enjoy it. Why not? Focus on the other person. Do you think he thinks it's funny? People say, I was only joking. But did he think it was funny? If he didn't think it was funny, you shouldn't be doing that. We need to change our focus outward to the other person.
This is so good for marriage. Ladies, if you're listening to this and thinking about, oh, my kids, oh, yeah, and how I felt and how you were as a kid and your stories from camp or whatever it is, that's good. Very good to be growing in that way. But if you take to heart what Rabbi is saying about how you interact with your husband, and like, the things that are going to bother him. Like, again, you had to leave the, dishes in the sink again. Whatever that if you take to heart what he's saying and you think before you act, is he going to feel good or is he going to feel bad? It's really a good lesson. How does one, it just seems a little in the too hard basket because we're dealing with our spouse 24/7. How does Rabbi recommend we bolster ourselves in this so we can really do it? And it just doesn't become like after the show for like 3 or 4 times in a row, we're good. And then it's just gone. How do we see, I'm using it. Why am I using that word? Inculcate?
Yeah, I know, yes.
How do we grow it in ourselves to be that person? It seems like a really tough challenge to become that person.
First of all, it's a lifelong quest. It's a lifelong quest. It's not either we are that person or we're not. We're just getting better every single day of our lives. Okay. Second of all, sometimes it's hard in the heat of the moment. Do an autopsy afterwards. Afterwards, sit down and think and say, did I say anything that hurt anybody's feelings? And that will help us eventually catch it before we say it.
Wow. Yeah, it's very good. Okay, we're going to take a question. Oh, sorry.
And third of all,
sorry.
If the other person is hurt and insulted and says things back, that should be a signal. Hello, you just did something.
Okay, so go ahead.
Okay, next.
So Jack,
we've got so many things. They're flagging.
Okay, so Jack on Instagram is asking, what if empathy does not exist in your spouse or child and they can't imagine how someone else feels?
Well, there's either two choices. Either it really does exist. It's just that it's hidden under layers of just hurt and pain and fighting back. So that's something that I can't tell you. It's doubtful that someone doesn't have any empathy. Or there are people who do have social challenges. And I work in the afternoon with a lot of those people who have social challenges, and empathy is not something that comes natural with them. It's intuitive with most people, but there are many people that don't have empathy so naturally. Meaning, they definitely are empathetic. They are the most caring people, but most of the time, they don't realize that what they're doing is hurting somebody else because they're in their own world. So you need to reconsider that question and say, does my husband not have empathy, or does he just totally clueless as to how that's affecting my feelings? But if he would know, he would be very empathetic. So if that's the case, then we need to be extremely patient. And we need to, spouses, I'm sure you talk about this, don't take for granted that they understand how you feel. But when it comes to this, if your spouse is this type of person, you need to really just anything you were taking for granted that they understood, you just need to just erase that board and just say,
spell it out all the time.
Just spell it out. Mm-hmm. Just really spell it out, just really patiently and say, maybe you didn't realize, but when you say those words to me, I feel just less of a person. And you do need to use that I language there because the person doesn't really know it naturally, but they're not selfish. They're just self-centered. So there's a big difference there, and they could be taught.
Wow. Another meme for you. Not selfish.
Self-centered, not selfish.
Right. Okay, we have to race through the other ones. Okay, go ahead.
The next one is children just need to be told that it's bad to fight. Tell them enough times and it'll disappear. Now, come on. We all know that that's not true because we tried it millions of times, but we just keep doing it. We say, it's got to work. It's got to work. And you have to understand, they know this. They don't have to be told in their personal lives. I ask children always, if you had 2 buttons, one button says peace and one button says fight. Whatever button you press, that's what you're going to have for the rest of your life. Which button are you going to press? It's a no-brainer. There's not one child that's going to pick fights. So why do they fight? Well, there's a lot of reasons, but one of the main reasons is they just don't know what else to do.
Hmm.
They don't know how to resolve their conflicts otherwise. And that's why our responsibility is not to tell them not to fight, but to teach them what to do when things happen that they automatically, instinctively start fighting. What do you do? So we talked about saying a low, calm voice, how to act in the future. And there are other things that we could teach them. That's really what they need.
But that's a myth that's pervasive and it doesn't help the situation. Okay, let's go to the next one.
Let's go to the next one.
Take the question. She's
okay. We really covered the next one. In order to eliminate bad interpersonal behavior, it is necessary to make a list. No name calling, pushing, putting down, bullying, teasing, excluding. I've walked into classrooms where they have a list from ceiling to the floor. It's not going to work because you didn't say no elbowing, first of all, right? You didn't say everything, right? And I had a boy in my class. He did have some social challenges, and sometimes he used to get on boys' nerves. And one day he's in class by a break, and everybody's talking, and he's telling the other boys about how his uncle is a nuclear scientist. And they thought he's making up stuff because they felt he makes up stuff. So they started laughing. His uncle's a nuclear scientist. Hey, Schmerl, Beryl, you hear? He says his uncle's a nuclear scientist. The whole place is laughing, and he's turning purple, and I'm standing right there before Shalom Secrets. And I say to the boy, what are you doing? And he says to me, what did I say wrong? I said, his uncle's a nuclear scientist. It's true. What did he say wrong? But remember, good or bad? I shorten it. What you said, is it making people feel good or does it make them feel bad? So we need to teach them just one rule. You don't need that list. Just throw it out. Just take one rule. And that rule will cover everything, even if you didn't write it down. He said, by the way, his uncle was a nuclear scientist. And that's the year I actually started creating Shalom Secrets. I met this boy recently. He's a successful father. He's great. He says to me, we got you started on Shalom Secrets.
Wow. And it was the perpetrator who did, what did the perpetrator that you confronted in that moment, what was he able to do, a kid?
Well,
was he able to change?
Well, I didn't have good or bad yet. That was before Shalom Secrets.
I see.
I'm just bringing out how you
didn't have the tools. I see. And so at that time, I mean, just for now, if that same situation happened and you went up to the perpetrator and you said, is that making, the nuclear scientist's son feel good or bad? And then he'd say, probably bad. Are they able to change on a dime?
Absolutely. This happens every day. Every day. Good or bad. And they realized they did the wrong thing and they learned the lesson.
Wow. Awesome. Okay, we're going to take the question. We're going to go into the last one. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's actually my question. What happens if with children, if you tell one of the children, does that make them feel good or bad, or you try to point it out and they want to justify, meaning they don't switch around what they're saying. They actually are like, well, she said that to me and he did that to me and I feel bad. And then they make it all about them and they start crying and they're falling apart and suddenly it becomes a bigger issue over just, you trying to let them see the other side. They turn it onto, well, this is how I feel.
Okay, great question. We deal with this constantly because everybody justifies why they did what they did. So two things. First of all, a child has to be emotionally ready to hear what you have to say. If they're in this furious, angry, crying mood, you just need to let them calm down and then you'll fix it later. Okay. But later, or even at the time, if they're not unreasonable, when they say that to you, I say to them, that's a great question, a great point that he did that to you. And I'd be glad to discuss with you a different time.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
But this is really off topic. Let's focus right now on what you did. And if the person just keeps coming back to that, then if the person's a reasonable person, you could say, I want to talk about that at a different time, but do you think that really completely justified what you did? And the person, it just happened yesterday. And the boy said, no. So I said, we can talk about it another. By the way, they usually don't come back to me, but I don't mind if they do.
Agree. You mean they don't agree? You're saying.
No, they do agree, but they don't come back 10 minutes later to talk about what the other boy did.
Yeah.
They're just using that as a justification, but they don't.
Diffuse the conversation, make it go elsewhere. Right. Okay.
Right.
Get the attention off them.
Yeah. So you have to understand, you're changing the topic. Let's stick to the topic. That's the most important.
Fantastic. Okay, good. Let's go. Last one, Rabbi. We're out of time here, so go ahead.
If I give in, it means that I'm weak. And that's why a lot of people don't want to give in whenever there's a conflict, because I don't want to be weak. And the truth is, it's so easy to understand that this is a myth. You know, we can look in Pirkei Avos and Ethics of Our Fathers in chapter 4. It says, Ezehu Gibor HaKrevi Shas Yitzray. Who's really strong? Someone who overcomes his inclination. A strong-willed person is someone who's strong. But we don't need to look further. Ask yourself, what's easier for me to do? Keep on arguing or give in? It's surely harder to give in. So if you give in, you're not the weak one. You're the hero. You're the strong person.
Wow.
That's important.
I get it. That's an intellectual gymnastics that you have to do. How do you make that so clear to a kid? Right. Or I guess your husband also. That's a hard one.
Yeah.
How do you make that easier?
The main thing is to get it clear in yourself, not to convince other people.
Got it. Okay, we've got time for one last question, then we got to wrap up. Go ahead.
Gosh, okay. So basically, how there's all these, like everyone's saying, we're getting lots of hearts and everyone's definitely agreeing with this. But again, is there a way, like today, once someone wants to try to implement this in their house, what's the first thing they can do? Because we haven't been doing all this. Obviously, most of us haven't. So their kids are fighting. How do they implement? What's the one thing they can implement starting today in their house that's going to take them to this next level?
I really think this simple rule is the first thing that should be implemented. And implemented in a way, I don't mean
which one, Rabbi? The
simple
good, bad?
rule, we may not say or do anything that might hurt anyone's feelings. We may not say or do anything that might, and once everybody starts doing that, then you could talk. But until then, it's just too a loaded atmosphere. And there's so much anger and hurt there that it's difficult to begin anything else. I would say the first thing is the simple rule, and that's what I would focus on.
That's fantastic. Okay, how can people get in touch with you, Rabbi? Your book, we're going to have that in the descriptions.
Okay, yes, the book is the Shalom Secrets book. It's written for children, but I've had so many people tell me that adults read it as well. So as long as nobody's looking, you can read it. Don't worry about it. And the truth is, I have a hidden agenda, like your partners hinted at before, that parents and teachers teaching this, we get it too. So that's my hidden agenda, okay? So that's the Shalom Secrets. There is.
What do you mean we get it too? I missed that last thing.
That means by us teaching it to our children, we will learn these skills.
Oh, I get it. Okay, I'm totally with you now. Okay, fine.
Okay, there is a parents and teachers guide for Shalom Secrets, which I'm making available for free. It's a digital download for free for a limited time for any listeners to the show. All you have to do is go on my website, which is sociallysmarter.com, sociallysmarter.com, and put this in your cart and put the code in Ladies TalkShow with no spaces, just Ladies TalkShow, and it'll be free. You can download it for free. It's a guide for the book.
That's wonderful. They can, at the same time, they can buy the book.
Absolutely. We also have a workbook that has scenarios, exercises for the children to fill out, written, to further help them absorb the ideas. You could do this by the Shabbos table. You could ask these questions. So it's available digitally as well. And so that's the story. Okay.
All right. This has been fantastic. I think it's elucidating for parents. I think it's elucidating for anybody who's in a relationship that wants to help end the conflict, to debunk all these 10 myths. It's been fantastic. Rabbi, I'm so grateful to you for being on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really, really appreciate it. It's a way for me to get the word out. Thank you so much.
That's fantastic. Everybody share this, like this, send it to your friends. This is Leah Richeimer for the Ladies Talk Show. We'll see you next time. Here's the thing, ladies. If you don't subscribe, you may miss out and you're going to miss some great content. So you need to either like us or follow us on Instagram, follow us on Facebook, on Torah Anytime, on YouTube, or go right to our website, www.ladiestalkshow.com, and fill in a subscription button. And then you'll get every week an update on exactly what's happening. And if you do that, oh, by the way, if you subscribe on our website, you also get 10 tips to have a great relationship. Don't miss it. And don't forget to subscribe. Thanks a lot.